And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to, I believe it's episode 6 of the V8ESC Backfire podcast. With me as usual, I have two-time champion Tony Klooster.
Dale.
I have Mr. Sam Stigboozin in the box. And right on cue, Mr. Johnny Brandon is with us as well. Good evening, Johnny.
Evening.
Okay, guys. So here we are again. We've just come away from the tricky street circuit, Belle Isle. It's been described to me in lots of ways. Marmite track, love it or hate it. True street circuit. Personally, I find it really, really tough. So we'll start with you, Johnny. Belle Isle, love it, hate it, or is it just a meh track to you?
Love it. Yeah, love it. I think the big thing for me, as you know, I've been racing this touring car, this TCR car, this front-wheel drive nightmare, should I call it? But I've been driving that all week. Jumped on for an hour's practice on Friday night in the V8 at Belle Isle. Between the walls, the sense of speed is just ridiculous through this. It's fantastic.
So what you're saying then is you're not taking the V8 seriously anymore because you're driving the TCR?
No, I am taking it, well, as serious as I need to take it. But it's, I enjoy the V8. I enjoy all of it. I'm enjoying the TCR, to be fair, even though it is front-wheel drive. But yeah, it was love Belle Isle. It was great.
Yeah, good. And Tony, what about you? Is do you like these little tight, twisty street circuits, or do you prefer the big, wide open track?
No, I really enjoy the tight, twisty stuff. I wish they paved the thing, though. It's pretty bumpy out there and hard to get a lot of grip, but I think that adds to it. And as Johnny says, sense of speed in some of the areas because you're just you're inches off the wall, makes it exciting.
Yeah, and I think as well, it's one of those tracks that a lot of tracks you make a mistake and you're into a big Formula One runoff area, or a quick 360 on the grass and you're back on the track. But round here, you make a mistake and it's pretty much game over. We see a lot of cars in the walls round here this weekend, including myself, including Johnny. And I'm sure when I watch the broadcast back, I see Tony with a few panels missing. So, start with you, Johnny. Does that add to the excitement and the pressure that, you can't make a mistake because, if you do, that's it?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's what racing is, isn't it? It's getting up to that line without going over it. And I think a lot of the problem nowadays, people moaning about concrete runoffs everywhere, especially Formula One. They've changed everything to concrete runoffs, got rid of all the grass. Well, you've taken that limit away. So the walls can't be taken away. and it sort of brings the precision back to driving for me, which I like. Yeah, it was really enjoyable.
And Tony, yeah, Johnny touched on it there. Obviously, as people know, I'm not a big fan of Formula One, and it is very sterile. And like you say, they have changed the tracks to make them. They've put it under the safety banner, but it does allow drivers to make big mistakes and get away with it. But Belle Isle, traditional street circuit, that's got to be where the fun is, isn't it? Surely.
Oh yeah, absolutely for me as well, and I agree. I think the Formula One tracks have got far too much runoff on them. With maybe the exception of Montreal. Montreal's got a lot of walls around it as well that you can get into trouble with. But most of the rest of them, I think, are too wide open. Circuit like Coda. I think you could drive for a mile without getting off the concrete.
Yeah, definitely. So looking back on round 14, which was the sprint race from Belle Isle, 20-minute race. Just looking at the results now, obviously, Johnny qualified first, finished first. George qualified second, finished second. So the top four,
that wasn't quite
finished.
as straightforward as it sounds.
No, but I noticed the lack of, although I enjoy the excitement of being close up to the walls and that sort of thing, it takes away overtaking opportunities. Is that what happened in race one? Was it just impossible to pass people? And I could take that to you first, Johnny, if you want, as you won.
He didn't have to pass anybody.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I was trying to find a way of not saying it without sounding too cocky.
I was more getting at, is it?
I don't think it should make any difference, personally. At the end of the day, whether there's walls to the outside of the track or not, the track is still determined by white lines on either side. So quite why it should make it, it's not the walls. It's quite a narrow circuit. So I don't think it's the walls that stop any overtaking. I think it is a bit of a narrow, tight, twisty circuit. I think you can race there. It relies on people leaving each other space, etc., etc. But for me, that's no different than anywhere else.
Yeah, I think
Tony. Sorry, Tony. I was just going to say, obviously you was chasing George all the way. Did you find it? Was it hard to get past George because of George's pace, or was it hard to get past George because of the nature of the track?
I think that George's pace was spot on for sure, and when you got 2, 3, 4 guys that are all basically the same pace, you're waiting for someone to actually make a mistake before you can take that opportunity. I think that the weekend before in the super sprint races, Johnny and I in the first race were nose to tail for just about the entire length, and we had a great battle. And I think sometimes you don't need to have the passes to make good entertainment.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't disagree there. I'm just as happy watching cars defending and making it very difficult for the cars behind to get past and maybe forcing them into mistakes than I am, the front guys just, trying to pass each other every corner. But, you guys, obviously Johnny got another win. Tony, you were on the podium as well. And in fact, just looking at the NQR Holden guys finished third, fourth, and fifth. So stellar performance from the team, and I know how much work you guys put into the setups. Just going through the field, obviously we had a new driver, our first ever South Korean driver. And I'm going to try and pronounce it. I think it's Jae Han. I didn't personally see him on track. I don't know. Was it race one that you called him out, Johnny?
No, that was race 2.
Ah, right. Okay.
I think with the reverse grid, I think he just was a bit eager. Hit me up the rear a few times, but apart from that, he seemed quite good though. He seemed, I think that he'll get used to that whether he's used to racing in the larger grids in such powerful cars that don't stop quite as easy as, say, GT3s, GTEs do, especially early on in the race. Then he'll get used to it.
Yeah, I think he. Just looking at the result, I think he was 2 laps down. So he may have had some issues in race 1, but I think he got a fairly decent result in race 2. Other drivers, or the main driver that sticks out for me is Ryan Walker, somebody that's fairly new to the series. And listening to his interview on Apex, there, he was saying every time he races, he's feeling more comfortable with the car. And I know he's been getting good results in other series. So, do you guys think he's somebody that to watch out for your multiple crowns in the future?
I think if he keeps putting in the effort, we're going to see some progress from him. In the second race, big long race, 40 laps, he was on the lead lap, about a minute 10 down, but he was in good company there. So there's potential for sure.
Yeah, I think he's made rapid improvement in a very short space of time so far. So if that continues, I'm sure we'll be there. But as soon as somebody says they're starting to get the hang of it, tends to be some famous last words in the V8. You need to be on your toes, even when you have supposedly got the hang of it. It still keeps you on your toes, and you still try not to overstep the mark. I think Tony will agree. So it's a handful, but that's why we love this car.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think that's why we all drive this car, because you're right. The minute you think you've sussed it, that's when it bites you on the arse. On to race 2. Double the race distance for a feature race. I started third, I think, from the big reverse grid we got. And I know Johnny doesn't like the words, but I had a massive net code with Rich Warmingham. But Gary Croft, he pretty much led from the first corner to the finishing line. He was under immense pressure from Harold. Tony was right up there as well. Fantastic drive from Gary. Tony, I'll go to you first, as you're his team boss.
Yeah, Gary did a fabulous job in the last race there, and he's put in a lot of effort, and we've seen in the last couple of months, I'd say, sparks from Gary indicating that he's going to be up there, but he's had some terrible luck, and but he's put in a lot of effort. He put a lot of effort into the setup last week, and it was a well-deserved win. And it's nice. Last couple of weeks, we've seen some first-time winners, and I think it's good overall for the league.
Yeah, definitely. And Johnny, obviously rival team, but you can't take that win away from Gary. I don't know if you've watched the broadcast back, but the pressure he was under at the back end of the race was immense.
Yeah, no, congrats to Gary all day long, and it's been coming all season. I think Gary and Greg Carr, two NQR drivers, they've been rapid all season. So they're definitely noticeably quicker and more consistent, more importantly, than last season. So yeah, well done. It was, like you say, he was under pressure, but it's only touched it. If you didn't make mistakes, if you had good pace round there, which he did, somebody needs to have a good bit of overspeed to be able to even try a move, let alone pull one off, unless you make a pretty sizable mistake. So he did really well. He looked like he didn't put a foot wrong the whole race. So yeah, it was impressive.
Yeah, and again, from watching the broadcast, I think the guys, Marco and Sam, were tipping Victor Tanaka for a good result in that one. But obviously, when I had my netcode issue with Rich Warmingham, Victor came round a blind corner. I watched it from his cockpit and just ploughed into me. I think I could possibly be pregnant. And there is a lawsuit, in the post towards Victor. I've had no flowers, no chocolates, no nothing. Victor is, absolutely rapid on his day, aggressive. What something I just want to touch on? Where do we think it's going wrong for Victor this season? And starting with you, Tony, again as his team boss, is it just bad luck?
No, I don't think so. Quite frankly, I think that Victor puts in far too much time with his GT cars that he likes to play with, and shows up 5 minutes before the race and tries to do the best he can. He's and basically, he's running for victories. So I think that he can be a little bit over aggressive at times. And if you're not willing to put in the effort, I think the results are going to show that.
Yeah, definitely. And Johnny, obviously you had a 7th place. You had a good running battle there with Chris Jackson for a little while. And then, if memory serves correct, I think you lost it all on your own at the end. Maybe your car was damaged or something, and you ploughed the wall and blew your engine. But you still managed to get home in 7th place and score some good points. So, what was the race like from your point of view?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward up until, I had damage from the start from the Korean driver at the back, which made it a little bit tricky from the start. But then, it was fine up until I caught up with Chris, and then things got a little bit interesting. And then, I ended up having sort of a wandering steering and just overdrove the car, touched the grass. Just struggling to control it after that. Trying to push, a bit hot-headed, and that was it. Put it in the wall, and luckily for me, people seem to have crashed a little bit more than I did, and I was able to take the fast repair and still pick up 7th. Yeah, a bit of a frustrating one for me.
Yeah, so we talk. We usually have a little chat about driving standards and things like that. I can't remember which race it was, and I'm sure he won't mind me mentioning it. And I was talking to you guys before. Andrew Hoffman pulled a move on me from a different country, let alone a different state. But I did call him out on the during the race, and give the guys due. He gave me the place back, and then I made it really, really difficult for him to try and get back past me again. But I know we sometimes grumble about driving standards, but given the nature of the track, I've now watched the broadcast. I know they don't pick up everything. I've looked at some of the in cars from the actual race replays of things that happened, and I was quite surprised that I thought the standard was fairly high given the nature of the track. Tony, did you see anything untoward? Obviously, I was at the back end of the grid, but did you see anything at the front end?
Not from my window, but I did review the incidents with Johnny and Chris, and Chris and I had a chat about it later on, and talked about what what could have gone differently, and it's unfortunate that the incidents that happened in my mind, and Chris knows that I feel this way. I don't think that they should have happened. So maybe a little bit of overdriving on Chris's part for that, but the rest of the racing, from what I saw, and I watched the broadcast, and I did review both of the races on Sunday. I thought for the rest it wasn't too bad. As you said, Andrew came from a couple of football fields back to try that dive on you, and that was probably ill-advised. But for the most part, I'd say it wasn't too bad.
And Johnny, from your perspective, especially in race 2, where winning race 1, you're starting near the back and you've got to come through the field. Driving standards okay from your view?
Yeah, mentioned a couple of things that were a bit frustrating. The new guy, again, I think it's just getting used to it. Was maybe a bit hot-headed and won't go into the Chris thing again. But generally, yeah, it seemed okay. I was just tucked up behind Tony for most of it, just taking my time cruising through the field. Yeah, I didn't see anything too bad. There seemed to be a lot of people hitting the wall, I think, more than anything else. It's just a bit of overdriving the car. It's easily done. It likes to move around there. I found you just couldn't push, but you just had to find your rhythm, know what you
Yeah,
could do, and if you didn't make a mistake, you were going to be fast. And it was
yes.
the guys that made the most mistakes lost the most time, as opposed to the guys that were pushing gained the most time. That's what some people don't seem to realise.
The one thing I wanted to mention, Johnny, was that when you're tucked up behind me there for the first 10, 12 laps or so, the pace that we were driving was very, very slow, actually. I think we were in the 132s or 133s as an average, but cars just kept dropping off the side of the road, and we're gaining positions that way. And it was quite a reserved pace, I think, for us anyways, up to that
Yeah, I
point.
was cruising behind you. Just I was obviously, I'm sure you were at the start thinking, "Oh, well, we're going to have to save any fuel. How many laps is it going to be?" After about 2, 3 laps, it was just obvious that the fuel wasn't going to be an issue because we were just so slow. What with people checking up and crashing and defending, and yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, it wasn't a fast pace for us, was it? In that second
No,
one,
not
it
at
wasn't
all.
worth me trying to have a look anyway. Cause it was a bit too tight, and you were having a look in front. I was quite happy to just follow you at that point.
Just a suggestion for you two. I think, Johnny, you should put a picture of Tony on the back of your car, and Tony should put a picture of Johnny on the back of his car, so that if you're stuck behind the other driver, it will be really annoying just staring at your own face.
I wouldn't make it past turn 1. I've ended up putting the back rear of the car into the wall.
Right. So, from the Discord chat, I certainly didn't see any post-race bitching that we've had at some tracks. Myself and Andrew have had a chat,
I
and
bitch after most of them, but I tend to keep it private now.
yeah, it's as we've said in the past, there's nothing wrong with event, but let's not make it personal. But to be fair, and that's what I think is good about the drivers in this series is mainly on the chat after a race. You're getting people apologising, sorry, didn't mean to do that, and I think that's that's nice to see.
It is nice to see. I'm old school where maybe I'm just getting old and grumpy and miserable. Where it'd be better if they just didn't do it rather than apologise afterwards.
I was just going to say that that was a thought that crossed my head. It'd be even better if you didn't have anything to apologise after the race. But mistakes happen, and if people do apologise, put their hands up. Sorry, mate. Didn't mean to do that. I think that goes a long way to smoothing things over post race.
Yeah, if like you said with this dive bomb from one of the drivers in the previous race, that's a conscious decision he's made before he's even got there. You just heard me and Tony talking. You can't create overtakes like that unless you've got massive overspeed. You have to wait for a mistake. If the mistake's not coming, you can't. If you try and force a move, odds on it's going to go wrong. So yeah, just advise people to be a bit patient. That's all.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. So moving on to the standings then. So Johnny, you've got a 129 point lead over George. And then Tony is 193 points behind. Harold in fourth and Chris Jackson in fifth. So Johnny, we're past the halfway mark. Are you confident of a second title?
No, not really. Just take one round at a time. See how it plays out. It's seems to be, yeah. See how it plays out. I'm all right in race ones. Race twos are becoming interesting. So yeah, just see how it plays out. Like I said, you need a bit of luck as well. So you can try and be patient, like I just been saying, and be careful. And you can't really influence other people's decisions, and you never know what's going to happen. There might just be a genuine two people crashing in front of you, and there's nothing you can do to avoid it. It's just luck. So we'll see what happens. It doesn't take a lot to lose that sort of lead.
And Tony, obviously you're sitting third in the championship and you've got some points to make up. With the tracks that we've got left, are you confident you can close the gap and take it down to the final race?
I'm going to Vegas in 2 weeks, and I'm putting my money down on Johnny to win the championship. So that'll give you an indication of how I feel about it.
Fair enough. So moving on to the club championship, Gary Croft, obviously, with his race win there, he stretched his lead there. Nikolai's in second and Ant Woodward in third.
You're going to be quite sparse in that club championship next season, aren't you? All these club drivers winning races.
Well, the beauty of it is, people that haven't qualified for it this season because they didn't do enough races last season will then qualify for next season. So, it as we lose them upwards, we should gain them from below. So, it's not too bad. The team championship is very, very, very close. As in, Tony, your team NQR Holden are currently 5 points ahead of TechSense Fitzstye Motorsport. So that looked like it's going all the way to the wire, Tony.
I would think that probably will go to the last race. So it's nice to see that it's close like that. Yeah.
What happened to our driver change request on that one?
Your driver change request was done, so Rich Warmingham is now in your team, but because the points he'd scored previously were for a different team, he doesn't carry them forwards.
But he's been scoring for the last 2 rounds, has he?
He has, yes.
For our one, okay.
And there is going to be a rule change next season to stop people changing teams because it does cock up all our automatic scoring and I have to do it manually. And on a Sunday morning, I can't think.
It's that bloody Nicole Foggy's fault.
Yeah, it is.
Right in it, didn't it?
It is. Moving on to the Safe Driver Award, Johnny, you're in front in that as well, but only just in front of Lane O'Connor. Now, Lane has been driving really, really well lately. And I know Lane is coming on shortly as our special guest, and I'm not trying to blow smoke up his backside, but he had a couple of good results at Belle Isle. And I know Lane doesn't race as often as he would like to, but when he does, he's showing big improvements, Johnny.
Yeah, that's all the advice he gets from me, basically.
Yeah, I think you should read the chat before he comes on because he's been giving you a lot of abuse. Tony, what do you think to Lane? I know you're normally sort of ahead, but he's got decent pace when he wants.
He has had decent pace. He had a couple of good results on the weekend. Yeah, Richard Warmingham had, I think, a 5th place in the feature race. Another good result from him. So obviously, all of Johnny's tutelage is paying off.
Yeah, it certainly is. And the Fred Bingham
Jokes
Forever
aside,
Forward.
We do try and help each other. On a serious note, we do
and
try
so
and help each other. It's all part of being in the team.
Yeah, that's what teamwork's all about. Fred Bingham Forever Forward Award. Johnny, you're miles ahead at the moment, ahead of Victor. Obviously, Victor mounted me, abused me, made me sore, and then quit. So And obviously you guys starting, near the back for race 2, providing you get through cleanly. Obviously, you make up a lot of spaces. So yeah, Johnny's doing well in that. One thing I really want to touch on, and I think they touched on it on the broadcast. Tony has 29 overall wins in this series, and Johnny now has 28. I'm going to start with Tony. Is that something that you look at, or is it just another stat?
Wasn't anything I looked at until they mentioned it on the broadcast. I didn't realize that Johnny had accumulated so many wins in such a short period of time. So, it speaks to Johnny's ability, and obviously a very good racer. So I'm sure that he'll be ahead of me before the end of the year. We still have 3, 5, 6, 8 races. So it'll be interesting to see how it finishes up.
And Johnny, was that something that you was aware of? Was it, is it something that you look at? Is it something that, as Tony's just said, I'm going to be top of that pile by the end of the season?
No, it's not something I looked at. It's something now I want to be top of, though. Now I've been made aware of it. But yeah, be interesting. Something else to look at.
Excellent. Right, it's time for me to put you guys on the spot. So I'm going to start with Johnny. Your driver of the meeting and why from Belle Isle, please.
It's going to be Gary Croft on his first win, I think, just because the second I saw him get into the lead very early on in the race, I knew he was going to win it. It was no real surprise, making massive improvements. And like you say, had loads of pressure. It's not easy around a track like Belle Isle. Overstepped the mark. I'm sure he was nervous. And to keep calm and not make a single mistake, because you don't get away with a single mistake generally around there with those walls. That was pretty impressive. So Gary Croft.
And Tony, same question for you.
Yeah, I think that that Gary deserves it. I'd like to give a special mention though to Harold. Harold had a 5th and a 2nd, so 2 good results in the 2 races as well. So, yeah.
So from me, when I didn't actually get to watch the broadcast and everything that happened until later on Sunday afternoon, and just looking at the results, it looked like a bit of a toss-up for me between Tony for his 2 third-place finishes, and as Tony said, Harold, who had 2 good finishes. But then after watching the broadcast, you can say that on the reverse grid you get out in the lead, and a track like this it's difficult to pass. But seeing the pressure that Gary was under, and also knowing what a nice bloke Gary is, I think Gary's got 3 out of 3 tonight. So all 3 of us, Gary Croft, driver of the meeting, congratulations. So at this point in time, we will bring our special guest driver in, and let me just unmute. So our guest driver tonight is the one and only Mr. Lane O'Connor. Before we let him talk, I suggest everybody gets Google Translate up, because you may not understand him. Lane, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, good evening, gents. How you doing?
So we've just talking about Belle Isle there, and you had a couple of really good results. We spoke earlier, Johnny and Tony, about Belle Isle being a bit of a Marmite track. You love it or you hate it, and it's make a mistake and it's game over. Is that, do you enjoy those sort of tracks, or do you prefer the wide open F1 make a mistake and get away with it tracks?
No, definitely prefer tracks like this. Belle Isle for me, I relish that challenge, because as you just said there, if you if you make a mistake in the F1 tracks, the big wide tracks, you can get away with it. It doesn't give you anything to go for, eh?
Yeah, definitely. And, like I said, you had a couple of decent results. And I spoke a little bit earlier about, I know we've spoke that, you don't get to race as often as you like to, but you seem to be picking up pace in this car. From someone as slow as me, where is this pace coming from? Is it just practice, or is it, are you getting Johnny to drive races for you? Something going on.
Yeah. I'm actually getting Johnny around to race for me, and that's how it's happening. No, I would say a lot of it's practice. The other thing is this is all I've been racing. I don't do anything else just because of a time issue. How long I can spend in iRacing at the moment. But it's practice, and it pains me to say this, but John does help out, and he'll sit in the car and he'll point out my faults, where I should be not braking, where I should be braking, where the obvious things. And so it does pain me to tell you, but he does help me out a lot. So that'll have a minute bit to do it as well.
Jesus, his head's going to be bigger than it is already.
I'm stunned. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. I'm stunned.
Don't say anything.
So at the moment, Lane, you are sitting in 16th in the championship. Like I say, you've not done as many races as you'd like to. Going forwards, the rest of this season, what are your aims? Is it just to keep plodding on and getting quicker, and then for next season, are you planning to do a full season if you can, and really test yourself to see where you can finish?
Well, you've asked me the question once before. A couple of months ago, I was starting to get results, and my answer to you then was on the main series was to get top tens, get as many top tens as possible, because I was constantly finishing between 10th and 15th all the time. That's where it was happening, and it was basically to do with the way I was driving the race. What I do now, it's more of a case that I don't really want to race anybody hard at the moment. I want to find my pace, stick with that pace, and if there's somebody coming up behind me, if Tony will tell you, John will tell you, if they come horsing up behind me, you're not going to see me sitting on every corner or moving across the track or anything like that. There's just no point. I just want a race, and I want a good, clean race. So if I do what I'm doing, I end up with better places. And as you say, my pace gets quicker and quicker and quicker.
Yeah, definitely. Because, I found as well, if you try and race somebody that is obviously faster than you just end up losing time and ruining your own race. But looking forwards to the rest of the season, we've got Zandvoort coming up in a fortnight, which is another tricky, slippery little track right on the beach. Bathurst, that's always a corker. Road Atlanta, and then the super sprints to finish off at Silverstone on the shorter circuit. So anything there that sticks out that I really want to make sure I'm there, and I really want a good result there.
Right, the Zandvoort one, I literally bought the track on Sunday, I think it was, and had a quick test round it. I love it. The only problem is I will be practicing this week, but I won't be doing the Super Sprint series this week because I'm being granddad again this week. But I will manage the main race the week after. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'm also looking forward to Bathurst because of all the tracks, Bathurst is one I really like, and I seem to do it okay. And so I'd be looking at Bathurst to say I would be looking for a position there.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Tony, anything you want to ask Lane?
I wanted to comment on Lane's discussion there about the way he's approaching his races, and I think that's very, very smart what he's doing, because what ends up happening when you pace yourself like that is that you get your laps in. and laps are experience, and experience leads to gain quicker. So I expect to see Lane move up in the standings. I see you're about 100 points ahead of him, Clyde. So my money's on Lane to be ahead of you by the end of the year.
And there's an envelope in the post for you there, Tony.
And Johnny, obviously you are Lane's team boss, and Lane does slate you quite a lot on the chat in here, on Facebook. Whilst you have the public's ears, is there anything you'd like to say to Lane?
Oh, I wouldn't be nasty to Lane. I think it's really impressive what he does. He's doing really well. Obviously, he's when he puts in the practice, he does really well, and it's really quite impressive how much he's improved this season. And it's even more impressive that a man of his age can sit in the rig for that long without needing the toilet at his age. So well done on all fronts, Lane.
Cheers, mate. But as you know, I've got an iron brew bottle beside me.
Yeah,
Good old iron brew.
Well, it's empty, yeah. But not at the end of the night, it's not.
Right, guys. So before we move on to preview of Zandvoort, just for anybody watching, anybody in Discord or watching us live, we are here to answer your questions as badly as we possibly can at the end of the show. Nothing in yet. So, if you want to get any questions in, get them in and we'll do our best to answer them. Don't forget, we've got Lane with us as well, who's somebody that, he won't mind me saying, started off fairly slowly in the series, but, he's gaining pace week after week after week. So, if you want to try and pry some secrets out of him, then, do your best. Bear in mind he is Scottish and very tight, though. So, guys, Zandvoort, somewhere I've been in real life, and the back of the track is pretty much right up against the beach, and if the wind is in the wrong direction, you get sand on the track and it gets very slippery. Can be difficult to overtake. Johnny, what do you think of Zandvoort?
Yeah, another good track. I think there's actually some good overtaking opportunities on there. So yeah, it should be interesting. Some tricky corners. I haven't actually been round it, I think, since the last time we did it in the V8s. A couple of seasons ago, maybe 2 or 3 seasons ago. And if I remember rightly, I think George was rapid around there in that race. So yeah, sure, everyone will be on the pace, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, we last did it in season 4, and you're right. George does hold the V8ESC lap record with a 1 minute 38.357 for Zandvoort. Tony, what's your impressions of Zandvoort?
Yeah, it's been a while since we've been there. I think the last time I raced there was mid 2018. It's one of those tracks that's slippery. Similar to Laguna Seca. You mentioned the sand, and I actually think that they model that into the track surface. So it is lacking a little bit of grip. But I agree with Johnny. I think that there's probably 4, 5 opportunity for passes. I think that the toughest part for us as a league will be getting through the first complex, the first half lap. If we can survive that without getting into each other's way, then there should be some good racing.
Yeah, I must admit it's one of those tracks that I really enjoy, but I'm not very good at. And I hope people listening to us tonight and listening to us, in the future before we race there, I hope we don't get the low turnout that we tend to get at some of these difficult tracks, because it is once you get the knack of the track or the flow, it flows really, really well. And am I right in thinking that F1 is going back there next year?
That's a rumor.
Yeah, so it's a really really good track in my eyes. Anyway, Lane, you've just said you've just brought the track, done a few laps, and really really like it. Is it is it one of those tracks that I know you're saying you're aiming for top tens, but as it's a new track to you, are you still setting your sights that high, or is that going to be one of those I'd just like to finish tracks?
Yeah, I've got to be honest with that one. I think that's one of the ones I'm just going to want to finish. Possibly because the nature of the track. I think if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, you could end up, half a mile away on the grass. Not anything malicious. I'm just saying it just looks like one of those tracks. So I'd be impressed if I could finish those races.
Yeah, I think that'll be the same for me as well. And back to Johnny, Zandvoort, I expect qualifying for the sprint race to be very, very close. How much practice are you going to put in for this track? As it's one of those tracks that doesn't seem to be used very often.
Probably a couple of hours. The same basically as what I do for all of them. Is you just need to try and find a setup that I'm comfortable with. That's the first hour, and then once I've found one, the second hour tends to be just getting used to that setup around the track. That'll probably be it because of the TCR commitments and whatever as well. But yeah, we'll see how I get on with that. If I feel like I'm struggling and I can't find something that works, then it might need a bit more time. But generally speaking, I tend to be able to just use one of my other setups, and it tends to work. It's just a case of finding what one works.
And Tony, for you, I know the hours and hours of practice that you put in. Is Zandvoort one of those tracks that you unload and feel fast straight away, or even with your experience, do you have to get back into the rhythm and then build speed from there?
I think I'm going to try a different approach for the next few races and not practice at all, because it sounds like Johnny does much better with significantly less practice than I do. Zandvoort, I don't know. It's like I say, it's been a year and a half since we've raced there, so I'll get a couple of laps in, try and figure out a set. And I have the one area that I'm struggling in recently, and I'm perplexed. I have no idea what's going on, and is that my qualifying pace is nowhere near my practice pace. And
So that 1X is Tony cutting them corners.
is that what that is, Johnny? I'm not sure, but anyways, my qualifying pace has been brutal of late, so need to figure out what's going on there.
And Lane, last question on not just Zandvoort, but you see Johnny winning a lot of races, and he's always fast, whatever track we go to. From a team perspective, do you build your own setups? Do you go, Johnny can do this time with this setup, so I'm using the setup, or do you take Johnny's setup and then tweak it to suit your driving style? What sort of goes on within the team dynamics and setups?
No, it's not really like that. We'll all work on a car and we'll all say what's good for us. So there might be a general setup that could be, say, we're at Croft, say, and the Watkins Glen one works. So we'll jump in that. And then if somebody prefers their ABS or their anti-roll bars in a different way, they'll do that. But generally, we've all got round about the same setup with different tweaks. And if you ask me to tweak the car myself, we're in real trouble. Generally, John would help me. He would ask me, right, what have you got a problem with? And I'll tell him what the problem is, and he'll say, well, try that then. But we've had this before when we used to race before, and I would use the same setup as John, and sometimes I would use a completely different setup because I just couldn't take anything John was driving. So it's not always the same. No, we all tend to do things different. Rich Warmingham, he tends to tweak about with his setup as well and have it completely different. So no, we're not all running the same.
Yeah, and I've got to concur with that. And a lot of people will say that, well, setups are king, and if you've got the fastest setup, you'll have the fastest car. From my personal perspective, it doesn't work like that. The NQR guys, which my team is a part of, they put in hundreds, if not thousands, of laps. Between the guys, Tony and Chris, Victor. Gary's been doing a shitload of work on setups this season. And does a lot of work when he gets a chance. And I tend to take whatever they come up with in the end, and then I usually find it's a bit loose for me, so I tighten the car up and work with Bill and Pete, my teammates, to sort of run a similar setup, but slightly safer. But I know this week I just couldn't get on with the Belle Isle set that NQR came up with for I don't know what reason. And I just went back to our Bathurst 1000 set and changed the gear in and loved it instantly. And I think what I'm trying to get at is, people that are starting out in the car, even people that are experienced in the car, I'm sure you guys will agree with me. It's not about chucking the fastest guy's setup on the car and you will be fast. It's more about finding a setup that with this car you're going to be more comfortable with and make less mistakes, if that makes sense. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah, well, I'll answer that that is an absolutely spot on. What has happened to me a couple of times is when Foggy was around, I've not been getting on with a set. Foggy will jump in and say, listen, I've got a set here. Do you want to try this? And I'll go, all right, then I'll try that. And I'll jump into it. And for some reason, I can't drive worth a shit see anything Foggy's using, I just cannot drive it. It's just, I just can't keep it on the track. I need something like yourself that's safe. I'm not quick enough to be having all these loose cars. But one thing I would say as well is John's correct. See when he says he's doing an hour and then he thinks about the car and then he does another hour, that's it. He doesn't do much more. And it really pisses me off.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll start with you, Johnny. We've had set up chats on here before, and you guys at the front. I know Tony and his team, work really, really hard on setups. And I've spoken to you about setups, Johnny, and you've gone, well, basically, I use the same setup every week. I just tweak it. Are you still doing that? Or are you finding that, to stay on top, you have to, make new setups every week for different tracks?
I wouldn't know how to. Now we're done at Belle Isle, I'll say what setup I used, but I used exactly the same setup as we used at Watkins Glen. And my normal routine, if I'm gonna give some secrets away, my normal routine is Belle Isle. Right, first thing I do is I'll do 6 laps with the same setup as I used last week, or whatever track they may be. In this case, Watkins Glen. Then I'll try the setup I used it in at Lagos. Then I'll try the setup I used at Bathurst. Then I'll try the setup I used at another track. 9 times out of 10, I'm no more than 2-3 temps off with all 3 of them. So then it just comes down to, okay, what one feels more comfortable doing that time. There isn't one that's particularly a lot quicker than others. Sometimes, obviously, normally what'll happen is the one that does feel most comfortable is the one that I'm 2 temps quicker with, because obviously I'm more comfortable with it, and then I just equalize out my tire pressures, and that's basically it. Obviously it seemed to work because my traction was amazing at Watkins Glen. I think that was a big plus point. Belle Isle rather, that was a big plus point. So whether that setup just really suited it, I was actually really surprised. I mean, at the sprint round, I'd literally done about an hour before that, and the car was just rapid. Obviously, everybody decided to put a bit more time in, and it was a bit closer this week. But yeah, generally speaking, I think you're going to make much more gains from practicing and sticking with something than playing with it. And it's especially in the current climate of iRacing. If you're in a dynamic room, you're wasting your time making changes and stuff because you can't tell, because the track's constantly changing. So I would normally go into a static weather room, forget trying to copy the weather of whatever the race is, just go into a static weather room so it's not going to change the track conditions, and then at least you've got a chance of telling what is quicker, if one setup's quicker than the other. But again, you need to have done 6 to 10 laps to make sure you're putting laps in and you're at your own optimum pace before you start changing anything, because you go in there and do 3 laps, jump in another car setup, try that for 3 laps, you're probably just getting quicker yourself. It's got nothing to do with the car setup. So I've got my own little technique and method that I use, and it works for me. So, and it seems to work for Lane and Rich and the other guys. We have to fine tune it a little bit, like they say, because I do like things a little bit tail happy, the front to be positive, but we can normally make it work between us, that we're all fairly happy.
Yeah, good answer. Tony, same similar question to you. I know the answers to these because I know what goes on in the chat. But within your team, you've got lots of different people working on setups, and somebody takes it and says try this, and somebody else takes it and does something else, and you end up with setup V327. For the viewers, do you go with something that your starting point, is it something that you've previously used that season, or do you go back to the last time you raced at that track, bearing in mind the parameters might have changed because of the new builds? What's your thought process in setup building?
So generally what I'll do is use the set we used that track last time, adjust fuel for however long we think the race is going to be, and then I'll do a bunch of laps, understanding that tracks have changed, and sometimes the dynamics within the suspension has changed from in the V8 over the period of time. And then I throw it out to the team, and the team start driving it, and we start tweaking on it. Sometimes they're big tweaks. This week we went from one end of the spectrum to the other. We started off very, very soft and ended up with a fairly stiff setup, I'll say. A lot of the work this week was just working on trying to get the suspension to handle the concrete at Detroit, and I'm not sure that at the end of the day, we got something that was perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but just about everybody could drive it. I think that Ant went a little bit in his own direction. He went a little softer than what we did, but yeah, we generally start with something we've used before, had some success with, and then just try and tweak it to the point where it's comfortable. And even individually between all the drivers, there are minor changes with either brake bias or anti-roll bars.
Excellent. So
one last thing
go
on
on, Johnny.
just as an example here of how I don't think setups, they make a difference, but they make it. You need to be comfortable with it. That's it. I don't think there's a special setup that will be absolutely rapid. And the example I want to use on that is that I use my setups, tend to be the same ones from the previous race, little tweaks, blah, blah. Nickel Foggy, when he was in it, everyone that races in the league knows how rapid he was. He used the default setup pretty much everywhere with ARB changes and tyre pressures, and that was pretty much it. So that shows, because he didn't like my setups. Mine were too lively on the rear end. So he would start with the baseline default setup, and he would make maximum half a dozen changes, like just to the ARB, maybe a click on the spring rate somewhere if he thought that was better. Brake by tyre pressure, that was it. And you see the pace that go ahead. So I don't really think setups are as big a deal as what people make out for. They're more for your own preference and comfort.
Yeah, and I think I can back that up through Tony as well. I can remember it was midway through last season. Tony will probably remember this. I can't remember what track it was, but Tony was saying he had about 7 different setups for this particular track, and he actually went out and tried all of them. And I think there was half a tenth in it from setup 1 to setup 7. You remember that, Tony?
Yeah, and that tends to happen quite a bit, actually. And I think the point I was trying to make earlier was that you can have 2 setups, one really soft and one really stiff, and have times that are completely comparable. So, to Johnny's point and to Lane's point, having something that the individual driver is comfortable with, I think, is more critical than anything else. Interestingly, Ryan Walker, during one of the practices, was using the setup I had provided for the league, and he said, I just can't get the car to turn enough, and was asking for some advice. I said, just go up and click on the rear spring. That should probably help you. And apparently it did make a big difference for him. So sometimes it's just one small adjustment that's going to make the car feel better for an individual driver.
Yeah, good. So everybody watching, you now know exactly what to do with setup. So, we expect everybody to gain at least a second at Zandvoort from, last time we was there. So that's a preview of the next rounds. Now we go on to league news. There isn't a great deal of league news going on at the moment. Myself and Sam and Dave in the background continue to work on the new website scoring app and the driver tuition that we want to bring in. Testing is going very, very well. Everything seems to be working apart from when Sam breaks it and then we start again. But that's all coming on, and we're on course to launch, ready for the new season. And I think what we'll do is in a few weeks' time, we'll get Sam to put us a load of previews up so you can see exactly where we're coming from and how much easier it is to navigate, and it's turning something really, really professional. The only other bit of league news really is this is the time of year when I start pulling the admins together. We start talking about next season and any changes we're going to make and what we're doing with the broadcasting and that sort of thing. So, be prepared for, maybe some questions in the suggestion channel, what you guys and girls want to see. Suggestion channel is there for you people to make suggestions, as per the name. We can't do all of the suggestions, but we do look at them, and if we think it will be good for the league, we'll give it a go. We've also got in 4 weeks' time Bathurst, which, as I said on the last podcast, which was only a week ago, we are opening it up to throwback paints from any type of racing that you want, be it V8 throwback paints or NASCAR or F1 or touring cars, whatever you want to do. So get your painting heads on. I will get a poster up at some point this week just to remind everybody, but it will be good fun, and we'll get Sam and Marco to pick their favourite, and somebody will get a nude picture of me in the post for winning. Tony, any other iRacing news? It's really slow this time of the year. Anything that you've heard?
No, unfortunately, nothing at this point in time. Keep hoping that we're going to see a new V8 sometime soon, but no word on that yet. The Xfinity G Series in Australia started a week ago, so the word there was that iRacing was still doing something with the Mustang. So hopefully we'll see, that in the coming season. I guess season 1 starts in December, so there's still hope that we may see something for that.
Yeah, let's hope so. Johnny, you heard anything on the grapevine of anything that's going on? Bear in mind it is that slack time of year for news.
No, I don't pay too much attention to a lot of it. I prefer to wait and see it once it happens. But no, I haven't heard anything.
And same to you, Lane. I don't know who else you talk to within the iRacing world, but anything coming up that's likely to give you a semi?
No, I've not really heard anything. I heard that Johnny was going on a diet, but I'm not sure if it's true. You know what iRacing's like.
That's rubbish.
There had to be something, didn't there? Just kick him out. Come on in this. In this rubbish.
That's that ballast penalty that we were talking about.
And I'm still winning. I'm still winning, even with the ballot.
And to be fair, you just mentioned that. Wouldn't that be good if?
No, it wouldn't be good.
It would, so we could, like they do in the British touring cars. You get weight penalties depending on where you are in the championship. That could be a good equaliser.
I think that would make it interesting for sure. Yes.
I don't know. I run with a full tank everywhere I go.
I must admit, Lane, so do I. That's the only time the car's comfortable for me.
Keep steady.
And another couple of things that have just popped into my small mind that have been spoken about in the past, but we've never really heard any updates. AI racing. Anybody heard anything on that? Is that likely to come in or not?
Last I heard was it's still 6 months out anyways.
And what about rain?
Well, I think that when it does come, people are going to regret it. It will definitely make for some interesting racing.
Yeah, I must admit, I've been quite vocal on that in our team chat, especially with Mr. Jackson. Not saying that he can't drive personally, but I've said there's plenty of people that can't drive in the dry, let alone the wet. So, but from the series, if there was rain, I don't know whether it would be a random thing or whether you could just, set it up to rain at a certain time. I used to enjoy the rain on R Factor 2, and I think they got it pretty spot on. It would stop raining and then you'd start to see a dry line appearing, and that was good fun. But yeah, I think especially with this car, it would be a bit of a nightmare. What about you, Lane? You up for a bit of rain racing?
Yeah, I'm gonna buck the trend here. I loved it. I think it was it Project Cars I was on before I come to iRacing, and I, I just loved it when it rained. I actually got really decent results every time that the rain would come on and go off again, and it was wondering
It
whether you
brings
should pit
everyone
and
down
change
to
the
the same
tyres.
pace as you, doesn't it, Len?
Aye, well, that's what it does, mate. Aye.
You don't have to change your pace, but everyone else has to slow down.
That's it. That's the
Right.
one. I
Yeah,
just still say the same pace. That's what it is. That's probably why I did so well.
I think that the interesting thing, Clyde, you mentioned the AI. I think that AI is actually going to be a benefit to iRacing, and especially for new guys coming into our series, because they'll be able to get actual racing experience, with cars around them as opposed to just practicing aimlessly by themselves. So I think that'll help. And then if rain comes after that, perhaps they can get some experience driving in the rain around other cars with the AI, and be a little better prepared for the races going forward.
Yeah, I'm kind of got to disagree on that one. I think the AI is dangerous. Be careful what you wish for on that one, because for me, the AI is going to be geared at attracting the masses, and that's bad news if you ask me. For iRacing, I think the iRacing, the customer base and the general good population of it are the people that it's a hobby to them. It's like a bit of a commitment more than just a game. It is a hobby. It's probably the best way to say it. And AI is a little bit too much into the gamer realm, and I think you might attract the masses. And I'm not so sure you want the masses. Got no interest. I mean, I think a fantastic thing that they do. If you own the car and you own the track, you can go and watch the race, and then you can actually click drive and go onto the track in that race, but nobody else knows you're there.
Right.
And I think that's brilliant if people want to practice and get used to racing in a safe environment. I think that's fantastic. But AI scares me. Well, AI does scare me in general, but AI coming to iRacing, I think is an attempt to attract the masses, which I don't really think is going to be a good thing. But who knows?
And I sit right in the middle of the pair of you, as a sort of the fence is up my bum crack, and I can't decide which way I'm going to fall off the fence, because I totally agree with Tony about. I get so many comments privately on Discord where people are running certain lap times when they're practicing on their own. And they can't understand why it all goes wrong in the race, and I tell them perhaps it's different track conditions, or first, especially the first lap, first few corners of a race, you can practice your arse off and do thousands of laps, and you've got your braking points down to a T and all the rest of it, and then the whole field in front of you checks up early, and you're lost. So, I think any type of racing with other cars around you is going to be of benefit. My concern is anything I've ever raced with AI involved, the AI is always very predictable, whereas the human element is always very unpredictable. So I'm not quite sure whether it's going to be a hindrance or a benefit for people looking to get into especially league racing, because I think league racing is the pinnacle of iRacing. Anyone can level up their iRating and go and look at me. I've got an A license in road racing and I'm absolutely shite at it. So anybody can do that, but in a league environment with people that are putting a lot of time and effort, and in some leagues money into that league, I think you have to be of a certain standard to join the league and be comfortable, from day one. I know we're fairly forgiving in this league, and we get people that join and they're not very good, and everybody jumps on board and tries to bring them along and give them help and advice and that sort of thing. But there are some like deadly serious leagues out there that I don't know. I think AI possibly is going to be a benefit for those sort of people.
I don't AI help. I think it's worse. Sorry, but I mean, for me, we've all played the AI games with AI. Your project cars, your this, that, and the other. And you do the 6-lap challenge. You start at the back, you're coming through. It's the last lap, and you got a chance to win. So you just throw it up the inside, smash the bloke out of the way to nick the win. There's no consequences with it. It's that word again. Whereas on iRacing, when you know it's an actual person that's going to have a shout at you and send you some private messages, what was that for? If I don't think it's got any relevance. I think it can only do you harm racing around AI. Like I said, I think iRacing's thing they've got at the moment where you can go and watch a race and drive on track in a ghost mode, so no one can see you. If you're nervous, that is amazing. I quite like doing it every now and then anyway. It's quite good fun to drive through people when they don't even know you're there. It's good. I can go into a race Nichols in and just chase him around the track, and he's got no clue I'm there, and I can drive straight through the centre of it. He doesn't know anything about it. It's great fun. You should try it. But to have there's no consequences against AI. And like you say, they're predictable. I think that can create bad habits.
I do agree with you there, but from a personal point of view, there is nothing worse than me hot lapping. I would rather stand in my man cave and lick the windows rather than drive round a track on my own trying to beat my own time.
100%.
But if there's other cars on the track, albeit AI, predictable AI, because it will seem like a race scenario, I think that will edge me towards practicing more, and possibly even improve my racecraft. I don't know. I suppose I'll wait and see the consequences of it if it ever turns up, as to what it actually does for me, and whether general driving standards go up or down. I suppose that will be the defining answer. If it turns up, and do people get better or get worse?
It's who it's aimed at attracting that's probably the biggest concern for me. I don't think it can really do that much harm, although I don't think it's that much of a benefit. But if it attracts the masses, which is, I think, the whole reason for it. I don't think that's a good thing. I quite like the niche market. That you've got to be pretty dedicated to racing to want to pay the subscription fees and pay for the tracks and pay for the to be doing this. Therefore, you take it kind of seriously. I like that, as opposed to just being on there with everyone and their cousin that's paid 30 quid for Gran Turismo Sport, and you just got to look at a few videos online to see the state of that. I don't want this to turn into that. That's the thing.
Yeah, I do agree with you there. I think it makes iRacing more gamey. However, I do see it from the iRacing side. It's a business; they want to make money. The more people they can get to subscribe, the more money they make. And to be honest, I thought I had similar thoughts to you when they offered up iRacing on Steam, and I thought, oh God, here we go. All the 10-year-olds are going to be on it and stuff like that. And I think it did to start with. I think the racing went downhill for a couple of months, and I then think the people that couldn't do it just didn't do it. And once mummy said, no, you're not having any more pocket money this month, they disappeared. But from a personal point of view, I as I just said, I'm looking at it as it's going to be a benefit. but let's reserve judgment until if it comes in, and see where we go from there. Lane, any thoughts on AI from you?
Lane
Yeah.
knows all about benefits anyway.
Very good. I've got big thoughts on it. My way of looking at it is, if I come into iRacing, the whole point of me racing is I'm racing a real person. I'm racing somebody that thinks they're going to beat me, or I think I'm going to beat them. And as you said earlier on, Clyde, it's about the human part of it, about what are they going to do, where are they going to go, where are they going to put the car. If I go into AI, there's no way I jump into an AI race. I just, if you've got real people going around the track, racing their way, or a robot, then sorry, it would just have to be real people for me. I just wouldn't entertain it. And that's the way I feel.
Yeah, but what about as a practicing tool?
No.
Do you not think it will be useful for that?
No, I think the practicing tool I've got is when I come on and I meet up with the guys at XPR, and we jump in a room and we start practicing, we start talking about it. There's a bit of social stuff goes on as well. We deal with how we're handling the cars, blah, blah, blah. We all know how to race. We all know that when we get into a race, and you might not be in the same place as you are when you're practicing, so you're going to have to deal with that. That's the way I see it. If you're on iRacing, you should be good enough to be able to race around the track in a different part of the track than you've been practicing, and you should be racing real people. That's just the way I see it.
Right, well, that's enough from that miserable old git then. So, guys, we have no questions tonight. So, obviously we're that good. We've explained everything already, and nobody needs to know anything else.
Plus, Lane used to ask most of the questions in the
yeah, there is that. Yeah.
It's because I'm in here. There's no questions.
Before we go, Johnny, any final thoughts from you?
No, not really. Just hope I don't have to hear Scottishman talking about AI anymore, because it's going to get rather confusing very quickly. Yeah, not really. That's
Excellent. And Tony, any final thoughts from you? Anything else you want to bring up before we depart?
No, just looking forward to having a good turnout for Zandvoort. I think that the sprint races are a good opportunity for people to get some additional practice, especially in racing conditions with reverse grids, that sort of thing. So hopefully we have a good turnout this weekend.
Yeah, and just obviously to back up what I said earlier, if you don't own the track, buy it. It is a fantastic track, nice and flowing. It's not easy, but yeah, get it and let's keep packing these grids out. Lane, before we go, obviously, thank you for being our guest driver tonight at short notice. Any last words from you?
No, really. Thanks for having me. The only thing I could say is boom shank,
We like to give Sam a small talking part, every fortnight. Anything from you, Sam?
Not really. I'm not looking forward to AI. Don't like this. I think Johnny and Lane said all about it.
Right, people. Well, I have no idea what Sam just said. So,
I think you said boom shank, mate.
I know two words you learned to me, but I will not say it on the podcast.
So a Belgian and a Scotsman all in the same podcast. You heard it here first, folks. Thanks to Johnny and Tony and Sam running everything in the background. Thanks to Lane for jumping on and being our guest driver. Don't forget, if you want to be our guest driver in future podcasts, drop me a line and we'll make sure we get you on. Sprint series this weekend at Zandvoort. broadcast by ECA Racing TV. You will have the pleasure of myself and hopefully Mr. Pete Bingham and Mr. Bill Switzer on the commentary team. And then a week after that, the main event at Zandvoort. So good luck, everybody. Get practicing. You know all about setups now. And it's good night from us.
Good night.
Good night.
Right on.